attitude. What attitude? And that's all they would say. One of those very mysterious things. The same thing about Oliver. No drugs, but they said the kid is a little bit strange. Strange in what way? Well, one scout told me he didn't go home for the holidays. I said, oh, he didn't? Well, I guess that's going to cost him a couple $100,000. But there were questions like that. One of those mysteries. Don Shula, who was from the same area, from Florida, picked 2 Florida guys. He certainly checks everybody as closely as any other coach. If there's any character problem, he'd know about it, and he likes him, so I'd have to believe that character thing is kind of a myth.
So Miami has come off, I mean, with Smith and Oliver, obviously, you told us before you love the Smith pick. You got to like this one, too.
I love the Smith pick because Shula's whole history is not overusing running backs. He spots them around, and he's got a spot guy for instant dynamite who he can play a couple of plays and then sit down. Now he's got the impact guy on defense, so he's gotten 2 impact players in the draft, and that's all you could hope for.
What else may have, since we last spoke in the last 8 or 9 picks, what else might have surprised you? Atwater to Denver, although he was, rated pretty high there. David Williams to Houston. I mean, they have a stockpile of offensive linemen, don't they, Z?
Well, yeah, the fact that Houston, the fact that Atwater was rated higher than Oliver.
Yes.
That surprised me because when I talked to Dan Reeves, he said he loved Oliver. Of course, that's what they say.
I mean, they lied to you? Don't tell me they lied to you.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
Not Dan.
I'll tell you the pick that really surprised me. Pittsburgh, Penn State. Because if ever a guy had Pittsburgh Steelers written all over him, it's Wisniewski, who's a terrific drive blocker, a great trapper. He's small. Pittsburgh likes those small offensive linemen. I mean, he was really their style. Instead, they took the local guy, Ricketts. I don't know, maybe Chuck Noll was changing his philosophy.
Maybe. And Worley, actually, some people said that there was a question whether he could be a good runner in a trap block system. I think he could be a good runner on any system. We'll come back to Z in a moment. Louis Oliver is a young man that, when you see where he grew up in Florida, see how far he had to come to make himself an excellent collegiate athlete, you wonder why he lasted this long. Belle Glade, Florida lies at the southeastern corner of Lake Okeechobee, 70 miles from Miami. But those 70 miles could be an entire world away. Belle Glade is an impoverished farming town whose population is swelled by migrant workers during the harvest season and shrinks again when the fields are empty. Her soil is her fortune, says the town motto. That fortune-yielding soil is as black as midnight. It gives up sugarcane, vegetables, and sod that matures on the lush lawns of West Palm Beach.
I know personally coming up, being a youngster, that's all, you be around is sports activities, football. You always see the younger kids playing football, running track, playing basketball. So it's sort of like something that grows into you as a youngster coming up in Belle Glade.
It's not very much to do here in the way of socializing. Your horizon seems to me that it's limited.
Maybe that's why Glade Central High produced such talent like Louis Oliver. Virginia wide receiver John Ford. And defensive lineman Rondi Weston.
It was kind of rough because we never played like in the grass, and we always played on concrete or in the road, and it was fun, you only feel the pain afterwards.
But in the spring of 1984, Louis Oliver was missing something his teammates had, a football scholarship. And in a small, impoverished town like Belle Glade, a scholarship could be your only ticket out. But Louis had something else. His trophy case was full of academic honors. He had learned the value of an education from his mother, a strict disciplinarian who wanted a better life for her children.
It has to be something that you want to do, inside yourself. I want more. And you just don't settle for anything less than that. And that's what you strive for. He told me I'm going to make it in spite of. And I always say, I know you can.
Louis was able to go to Florida with his mother's help and 2 small academic scholarships. It wasn't enough, and he was determined to earn a football scholarship by his second season. He knew hard work would get him noticed, but in the meantime, his academics would get him through.
I think I was going to get out of Belle Glade anyway. I didn't think I wanted to be there and be stuck in a town like that. So I pretty much wanted to just get out of there. And if I didn't, if athletics wasn't the way, I knew I would get out of there with my strong academic background.
And now it's Louis's time. He has earned everything he's worked for. He graduated in December with a degree in criminology and law. He is a highly touted defensive back coming out of a Division I school. ready to go play in the NFL. His dreams are just about to be fulfilled. Louis Oliver, plummeting pick indeed. He's going to be a great pro, drafted by Miami, and he's one of 3 Florida Gators that have gone in the first round, joining teammates Trace Armstrong and David Williams. They have the team lead so far. Rams pick is next when we come back.
Now it's time to start hitting the sidelines. You can't stop the clock. On draft day in New York City, the Rams with the 26th selection. This day has flown by. We have had rapid-fire selections last year, 3.5 hours the first round. The year before that, well over 4 hours. So we've had some quick choices. In fact, the first 6 selections were bang, 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 I think within 30 minutes. So the Rams, this is part of the Dickerson trade. And a little bit later on this afternoon, long about the 25th selection of the second round, we will finally be able to put the ink blotter out and finish off the Eric Dickerson trade. It's taken a couple of years for finally all the picks to come shaken down, but finally the Dickerson trade, and this pick that's up right now as we recap what we've seen so far, this pick is part of the Dickerson trade. Then the Bengals, then the Niners as the Super Bowl teams will close it out, and now we've got 15 seconds and counting. All right, there are needs, there are obvious needs, there are not so obvious needs, and there's some names left out there on the board. One name, if you had to make a selection, if you're John Robinson.
If I'm John Robinson right now, I'd take Robert Massey, cornerback from North Carolina Central. He's a pure corner, and I think that's what the Rams are looking for. But they have those defensive line needs. They have offensive line needs. See what happens.
Rams have passed, so that puts the Bengals up on the clock, and the clock starts ticking for them. The Rams can come back at any moment, and you see the card being handed right there. So they have made their selection. Will it be Robert Massey, our man on the bubble, sitting and watching with Jimmy Roberts in Durham? Will it be a wide receiver? Maybe Sean Collins out of Northern Arizona.
But they really could use another defensive lineman or an offensive lineman.
Ronnie Weston?
There's some good players there.
Ronnie
Weston, Mitchell Benson. These guys are good players.
Tracy Rocker maybe in the first round.
Alex Stewart. There's some players there for him.
Here we go.
The Rams, on their choice from Buffalo, first round, select Cleveland Gary, running back, Miami.
Cleveland Gary, Miami's running back, who gives you such a dimension.
He's the only player that was still on the board that was in the top 15 as far as boards were concerned, as far as ratings. And, you know, John Robinson obviously saw value with this pick. He went against the needs. Obviously, it's a big back, which tells you what they think of Gaston Green. Here's a team that could have had John Stevens last year, took Gaston Green. Now they come back and take a Cleveland Gary. So they could have had the big back last year. They didn't. They passed. They took an undersized, injury-prone back in Gaston Green. Now they come back and have to use a first-round pick on a player at the same position. Gary's a fine player.
Transferred in from Georgia, right?
Came from Georgia. In fact, you know, if you look back at Georgia, they had Keith Henderson, Tim Worley, and Cleveland Gary all in the same club when they were freshmen. So you can see that Vince Stolley knows how to recruit running backs, or he did when he was the coach at Georgia.
He's not just a running back. This is a guy who's with the best receiver, certainly, among all the running backs out here. Probably, the softest hands in the drafting. And you limit yourself if you just let him run the ball and just throw him screens, because this is a guy who can really help you downfield.
One thing he can't do that well right now is block,
right.
And I think that's what you have to look at with Cleveland Gary. An outstanding receiver, good runner, as he showed at the Senior Bowl, but he has to improve his blocking skills to be a real factor as a pure fullback in the NFL.
So Cleveland Gary selected, and now the Bengals are up. And the Bengals, like the Bears, stood resolute with their checkbook at veteran free agency time.